Okay, so I just got done doing brake lines on my 2005 Escalade, and I wanted to put this in the beginning. So I did buy one of the cheaper eBay kits. It's like a $66 kit. Some of the lines that I had were too long and it was missing a line. So just make sure when you're buying your kit that you verify the vehicle and contact them and do what you got to do to make sure you're getting the right kit. I'm pretty sure I ended up getting the wrong kit. It had most of the pieces, but I was able to make it work. I did have to buy one extra line, but just make sure you got the right kit going into it. And if you're not familiar with my channel and you're seeing this video, this is not a stock Escalade. It does have some performance parts on it. So while we're underneath and you see some extra piping and some lines that are missing and some stuff that doesn't look like your vehicle, that's the reason. All right, so all the brake lines on these vehicles go to an ABS module, which is on the frame rail on the driver's side, about midway through the driver door. Here is a shot from underneath the vehicle. That is where the ABS module is. You can see it's right behind the transmission cross member on the frame rail, driver's side. This is what the ABS module looks like with the lines removed. So this module has 6 lines. Some of the modules have 5 lines because they have a single line that goes to both rears. This one has 1 line for each side on the rear. So here's just a diagram showing what the lines on the module are for. You can see the bottom 2 lines are for the master cylinder primary and secondary. And then the front brakes are on the left side when you're looking at it from the front. And then the rear brakes are on the right side. So as I'm going to start working on this, I'm going to go after the master cylinder primary and secondary first, and then the front brakes first, because you're working from the bottom left side towards the frame rail. If not, it's hard to get to the other lines. So I'm going to work from bottom left in so I can access the lines, and then when I assemble it, I'm going to work the opposite direction. So I'll start with that right rear, and then I'll go to the left rear, and then I'll just kind of work my way towards myself so I can get a wrench on each line as I'm disassembling it and assembling it. So for starters, this is a Wisconsin truck, and the lines are rusty. That's why I'm replacing them. So I started with some PB Blaster just to kind of get everything loosened up. I did do the PB Blaster on the front and rear lines first before I started with anything else. So this shot is kind of where the rear lines are set up. You can see the spare tire sitting there, and then you have the hard line coming in from the right side where that red line is, and then you have a rubber line coming out of the left side. So on top of that frame there where the arrow is pointed is where your fitting is for the hard line going into the soft rubber brake line. So here's a look on top of that rail, what that looks like. You have 2 lines going into a bracket, and then 2 lines, rubber lines coming out on the other side of it. So I just went ahead and sprayed that with the PB Blaster to let it soak. And then I worked my way up towards the master cylinder in the front in the engine bay. So here are the 2 lines that come out of the bottom of the master that go to the ABS module. So the rear line is the primary side of the ABS module. That line, when you're looking at it in the engine bay, is towards the rear of the vehicle. So that goes towards the primary side of the ABS module. The line on the right side of the picture goes towards the front of the vehicle, and that goes to the secondary side of the ABS module. So after those 2 lines are connected, they run down and meet with the other front brake lines, and there's just a plastic bracket that's underneath this little circle. And then there's what the bracket looks like as a close-up. So the feed to ABS is your primary and secondary lines from your master cylinder that go to the ABS module, and then on the other side of the bracket are your 2 lines for your front brakes. So now that I have the 2 lines for the master disconnected, I'm going to start working on the brake lines. So I just use a 9/16 flare nut wrench. A little bit better for these because they're rusty and they're kind of easy to strip out, so I just use the flare nut wrench. The adjustable wrench I have on there just to hold the bracket in place because it was pretty tight, and if you start to turn the nut, it'll actually start to bend the bracket. So I just use the adjustable wrench to hold that in place. So this is also in the driver's side front tire well. So that gray bracket there is where this line was. This line goes to the front passenger side. So what I did was I removed it from that bracket, and then I just cut where that red line is. And I just used tin snips to cut through the line. This line is pretty long, so you won't be able to necessarily get it out all in one piece. And it comes in the kit in multiple pieces, and it goes back together with the union. So I just cut it there, and we'll pull it out from the backside. So all 4 of these lines run down the side of the frame rail together in 2 of these gray clips that look like this. On the right side opening, 2 of the lines go in the right side, and then on the left side, the other 2 lines go in, but they're actually separated. So there's 2 of these plastic clips. I took the picture with the lines removed so it's easier to see. And then here's just the process of opening up that clip so you can see what it looks like. So I just used a flathead screwdriver, and I stuck it in the side of this. Then I bent the little tab on the inside and was able to push it out. So a little bit closer to the ABS module, there is another plastic clip that's holding all 4 of the lines together. These are all 4 of the lines that are going to the front, and then these can come out all in one piece, or you can separate them and pull them out all individually. So this little video here is just an example of how I pulled them out. So these 2 lines are the master cylinder lines. I pulled these out together, and these are the old lines, so you really don't have to be too careful pulling them out. But what I wanted to do was keep them as intact as possible so I could use them to bend my kit. So I just had a straight line kit, so I wanted to use the old lines to reference how to bend them. If you have a pre-bent kit, then you don't have to worry about it. You could just cut these things out and rip them out if you wanted to, but I tried to keep them together, and this is kind of the way that I pulled them out. Okay, so here you have the remainder of the routing for the front passenger side brake line. So the red line is the brake line, and then the circles are some of the clips that are holding it in as it goes across the front core support. This clip is on the passenger side frame rail up by the radiator, kind of towards the front of the wheel on the passenger side. Then once you pass this clip, it bends down and then goes right into the fitting for the brake line. So here's just all of the front brake lines removed. And now moving on to the rear lines, what I would suggest is to remove the fender wells. You can really get good access to the side through this fender well. And in this view, I actually have the side of the truck jacked up so the axle drops down so you can get some wheel separation between the wheel and the fender, just so you can reach in there and get a little bit better access. So here's a close-up of how the 2 lines for the rear are routed over the driver's side frame rail. So you have a wire harness, and then you have a line for your rear window washer fluid. So you have to pull those out to get access to the brake lines. And what I would suggest for this project is to remove the gas tank. I do have a video on how to remove the gas tank, so if you want to, check that one out. But I would suggest removing the gas tank for this. So don't be intimidated by removing the gas tank. If you're confident enough to tackle the brake lines, the fuel tank removal is a piece of cake compared to the brake lines, in my opinion. There is 2 clips holding the brake lines in that are behind the gas tank that you can't really access, so you kind of have to get them out, or you're not going to be able to route it properly. So in my opinion, it was just easier to take the gas tank out. So now I'm going to go ahead and start removing the clips that are holding in the brake lines that are going to the rear. So there's going to be 2 that are tucked behind the gas tank. There's going to be 2 clips that you can access from the rear tire well, and there's going to be 1 clip that is above the ABS module. This clip here is the one that is above the ABS module. I just kind of reached around the driver's side with the screwdriver and was able to use a camera and a light up there to kind of find out where I needed to go and pop it up. This green arrow here, you can see all of the rust buildup inside there. If you're in a really rusty area, I would recommend scraping all that rust out of there. I had issues when I was assembling it, actually clipping the new lines into the plastic clips because there was so much rust buildup inside the clips. So these 2 lines are actually broken. I didn't cut these lines. As I was starting to pull the lines to work them out, they just kind of disintegrated and broke. So just a little trick here, the 2 lines that go into the mount for the rubber lines, there's a bolt up on top of that cross member with a 13mm bolt head. It came out pretty easy, and I just loosened up that bolt, and then I was able to move that bracket around and get better access to those lines. So what I did was use an adjustable wrench on the bracket, and then I was able to manipulate the nut on the lines and get them off pretty easy. And then once I got the lines off, I just bolted it back into place, and then I was able to assemble it without any issues when I put it back together. And here I'm just showing that I did end up cutting both of the ends off. So one of these lines, the nut was actually seized to the line, so when I was loosening it, it broke anyways. So I figured I would just cut both of the lines off, then I could just pull the lines out easier. So the rear line, because they were basically destroyed, I'm just going to kind of wing it and guess on the shape. And then for the front lines, they're still pretty intact, so I should be able to just kind of follow these bends when I'm making the new line, and that should work pretty good. So I do have the first rear line done. Actually went in pretty easy. It is a split line right here, so the length of the line is a little bit long, so I just made some extra bends in it. So I went kind of up and around this little bracket here, and then I made another little bend just to shorten it up a little bit. I did push this first half in from the back side this way and then pulled it around the back to get it onto the fitting over here. Then as I worked it through, I just made sure it would go into the little plastic tabs and then not touch the frame at all on the way around. There it's linked into the other tab. Pulled it around the back side here, and then the rest of it I just bent by hand and then got it to go back up to the fitting over there. This is the line that I bent, that you saw me bend, just the 290s. I ended up kind of squeezing it together a little bit So I didn't keep the 90, but it does latch right into the plastic clip over here. So that worked out pretty decent. Alrighty, so I did get the second line in. You can see the copper one on the left. And that's what I made out of just a 25-foot spool that I got from the parts store. So I was able to reuse all the clips. And then this way it just went here, clip, and then it is all one piece. So I just kind of ran it through this side, pulled it through all the way to that side until I could get the other end up through here, and then I just pulled it backwards. So that one goes through all the way around inside all the clips, and that's what the back looks like. So this one I ended up using a wood clamp. It was a little bit tight because these are sticking out a little far, so I ended up just using a wood clamp. Clamped it around the frame here, and then I clamped this to get it to lock. All right, well, I do have the front driver's side done. Well, almost done. I still got to hook up the rear yet. So I put it in the same way that I took it out. It just came out on the inside of the rail here. But I do have it set to go in there, but I'm having issues getting this fitting to go in. So I think these threads are gulled up a little bit. So I'm going to have to probably tap that because it'll thread into this hole, but it won't thread into this hole. And I'm starting to go through the passenger side here. So I have this line already ran. It's in the little clip. Then I did take this front skid plate off just so I can access the line. That's right here. This is the straight line. So the skid plate is just 4 15mm bolts, and that comes right off. Here's the line here. I'm going to take it and bend it. And then I got to get it right in these little clips. So there's 3 clips. So I'll bend it down, get it in the clips. And then if I'm looking at this the right way, this union should be somewhere down around here, and then I'll be able to run the other line. So this line is going to go from the ABS module forward, and then there's a little connector piece right here that connects the two, coming from the wheel and coming from the ABS module. Okay, so there's the line all bent, and I just bent it by hand, didn't use a tool. And it just goes straight across and then bent up right there. And I should have plenty of room to connect that inside there. Another note I didn't mention before, because mine was already removed, is to take this fender liner out of there, and you have a lot more room to get in and access this stuff. So normally the fender liner would hang down kind of low, so you wouldn't be able to see all this. Like the driver's side here, it's still pretty low, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this liner out. Alright, so it's actually the next day now, and I do have this line completely ran. There it goes down to there, down into the middle, all the way across the bottom, bends up to the union that's right here, and then this line just comes over to this union here, which goes back to the ABS module. So along with these 2 lines coming back, they all come down into here, back through the factory clip. I did just take a zip tie to hold them a little bit tighter because they are a little bit wavy going back. And then I did the same with this clip here. They are all inside the clip, but I did just tighten them up with a zip tie. And there it is on the ABS module, all tightened down. So I did have some issues getting these fittings in. They just weren't at the right angle. It wasn't that the threads were dirty. I took an old fitting, threaded it in, threaded it back out, and I just didn't have it at the right angle. It was slightly off. I couldn't even tell that it was really off, but it was just off enough that they wouldn't thread in. But that stuff's all done. All right, so now I just gotta go ahead and bleed it, and then I should be done. I'll put the fender wells back in and go drive it.